I don't want to go back to the mud without first talking some more First Law. So today we're diving into Before They Are Hanged, the second book in Joe Abercrombie's marvelous First Law trilogy. Now, if you've read my review of the Blade itself, you'll know that I've been sitting on this series for years. They're right up there on the bookshelf behind me. I just never got around to reading it until now. This second book, released in 2007, picks up the pace, expands the world, and gives us some of the best character growth I've read in a really, really long time. And if you haven't read The Blade itself yet, I suggest checking out my spoiler-free review of the first book, because I will have to reference some events from it here to set the stage. But don't worry, there are no spoilers for Before They Are Hanged. And if you're new to this channel, welcome to Mysterious Galaxies, and thank you for joining me. In Before They Are Hanged, Abercrombie builds on the foundation laid in The Blade itself, expanding both on the world and the depth of the characters. The stakes are higher, the conflicts more complex, and the brutality of this unforgiving world is on full display. We follow three main storylines, each with its own set of challenges. First, we have Superior Glocta, and he perhaps has the most unenviable task of all, defending the city of Dagoska, which is surrounded by the Gurkish, riddled with traitors, and teetering on the edge of collapse. Glocta's predecessor has mysteriously vanished, and now it's up to him to somehow hold things together, all while navigating treacherous political waters. His allies are untrustworthy, his enemies are at the gates, and his physical pain is constant. Watching Glocta maneuver through this web of conspiracies, his sardonic humor and sharp mind cutting through the chaos, is as gripping as it is darkly entertaining. Meanwhile, the Northmen have spilled across the borders of England, led by Bethod, wreaking havoc and spreading fire and death throughout the frozen lands. We have the Crown Prince, who is woefully unprepared for the realities of war, and he's tasked with pushing them back, but he's leading the worst trained, worst armed, and worst led army in the entire world as we know it. This part of the story brings to life the grim realities of battle, where survival is often the only victory. The soldiers are unfit, their leaders are incompetent, and the conflict is anything but noble. Abercrombie uses this setting to explore the harshness of war in a way that strips away any romanticism. At the same time, Baez, the enigmatic first of the Magi, leads our group of adventurers on a perilous journey to uncover ancient secrets that might just be the key to saving the world from the terrifying threat of the Eaters. This ragtag fellowship includes Logan Ninefingers, Pharaoh, and Giselle Dan Luther, and watching them interact is one of the highlights of the book. They're as likely to bicker as they are to fight, and their mutual disdain of one another makes this journey feel as dangerous as the enemies they encounter. Logan and Pharaoh, two deeply and damaged individuals, struggle to control their violent tendencies, while Giselle, who starts the journey as arrogant and self-absorbed as ever, begins to show signs of real growth. This quest feels reminiscent of the classic fantasy traveling party trope, but with Abercrombie's signature twist, the group dynamics are filled with tension, distrust, and explosive personalities, making every step of their journey fraught with the danger, not just from external threats, but from within the party itself. As they venture through mysterious ruins and dangerous lands, we start to see more of Abercrombie's world and the hidden history that lies beneath its surface. Ultimately, Before They Are Hanged expands on the personal struggles of the characters while driving them deeper into the chaos that surrounds them. Whether it's Glocta trying to hold a city together with nothing but his wits and cynicism, or the Crown Prince leading a doomed army into battle, or Baez's fellowship navigating both ancient mysteries and personal conflicts, the story pushes each character to their breaking point. What makes Before They Are Hanged stand out, even more than The Blade itself, is to focus on character growth. Abercrombie builds on a strong foundations he established in the first book, and in the second installment, each of the main, and even many of the secondary characters undergo meaningful development, which deepens the emotional investment readers have in their stories. Starting with Major Cullum West, in The Blade itself, he left us with some serious moral questions. In This book, Abercrombie peels back more layers of West's characters, making it difficult to determine whether he's beyond redemption or if there's a path to salvation for him. His transformation as a soldier in the North is particularly striking, earning him the nickname Furious from the Northmen. It's a powerful arc that forces readers to grapple with the duality of his character. He's a man capable of both kindness and violence, and Abercrombie never shies away from exploring that complexity. Then there's Dogman, who has come to terms with being allied with the Union, the same people he once fought against. The moral conflict adds depth to his character as he struggles with the decision to work with former enemies in a battle against a greater threat. Watching Dogman navigate this new alliance while staying true to his own moral code is one of the highlights of the book, especially when you see how his perception of others, like West, shifts through the eyes of different POVs. Abercrombie's ability to use these POV shifts to reveal new facets of his characters makes them feel all the more realistic and complex. Glokta, as always, steals the show. He continues to ruthlessly manipulate his way through the political intrigue of the Union, using his sharp wit and even sharper cruelty to survive. But in Before They Are Hanged, we start to see small glimpses of his remaining humanity. There are moments where Glokta almost seems capable of feeling empathy. Almost. Yet, just when you think he's turning a corner, he reminds you that he is still, at heart, the broken torturer who hates everything, including himself. This constant push and pull with Glokta's character makes him one of the most compelling figures in modern fantasy, and Abercrombie further deepens his complexity in this book. He remains unpredictable, someone you can't root for but can't help but to admire for his sheer tenacity and brutal cunning. One of the biggest changes in Before They Are Hanged is the introduction of a classic fantasy trope that was somewhat absent in the Blade itself, and that's the traveling party. This group, Logan Ninefingers, Pharaoh, Jazal, and Baez, forms an uneasy fellowship as they embark on their quest. Abercrombie uses a setup to give us deeper insights into these characters, particularly Logan and Pharaoh. The tension between them is palpable, as both are deeply damaged individuals trying to suppress their violent tendencies, and it creates a dynamic that is both fascinating and volatile. Their struggle to balance their own inner demons while also trying to connect with the others in the group makes their journey all the more intense. Jazal in particular has one of the most notable character arcs in the book. When he began in the Blade itself, he was an arrogant, selfish nobleman, but in Before They Are Hanged, we start to see him change in ways that feel natural and well-earned. His time traveling with Logan and the rest of the party forces him to confront the limitations of his privileged worldview, and by the end of the book, Jazal is almost unrecognizable from the pompous fencing champion we met at the start of the series. Abercrombie excels at taking characters you initially despise and making you care about them as they evolve, and Jazal is the perfect example of this. His growth feels gradual and realistic, and the interactions between him and Logan are some of the most rewarding moments in the book. In addition to the main cast, Before They Are Hanged also introduces us to some unforgettable new characters. Chief among them, and one of my personal favorites, is Nakomo Kosuke, a mercenary whose charm hides a dangerous, self-serving nature. Kosuke is one of those characters you instantly love to watch. He's unpredictable, morally dubious, and always entertaining. Though his role in this book is relatively small, it's easy to see why he becomes a fan favorite. Abercrombie's ability to introduce such a fully realized side characters, even when they only have a limited page time, speaks to his skill at crafting a vivid, living world of memorable personalities. Beyond the characters, what also makes Before They Are Hanged such a success is the way Abercrombie builds the relationship between these individuals. The tension, the distrust, and the occasional moments of reluctant bonding between the members of Baez's traveling party adds a layer of complexity to their interaction. It's not just about whether they can survive the dangers of their quest, but whether they can survive each other. The dynamic between Logan and Pharaoh is fraught with intensity, and Abercrombie captures their struggles with brutal honesty. These aren't heroes on a noble quest. They're deeply flawed, often selfish people trying to get by in a world that is as likely to kill them as the enemies they face. As with the Blade itself, Abercrombie continues to subvert traditional fantasy expectations. You might expect this ragtag group to bond over their shared quests, but instead, the animosity between them only grows. The traveling party is full of characters who barely tolerate each other, and their uneasy alliances make every interaction fraught with tension. It's a deconstruction of the fellowship fantasy trope, and Abercrombie handles it brilliantly. He shows that sometimes the greatest threat to a quest's success isn't external enemies, but the people within the group itself. If you enjoyed the Blade itself, but were craving more world building, action, and exploration, Before Their Hang delivers on all fronts. Abercrombie significantly broadens the scope of the world in his second book, giving readers a sense of the vastness and complexities of the First Law universe. In The Blade itself, we spent a lot of time in Adua, but here, Abercrombie takes us beyond the Union's capital to new and exciting locations. Whether it's the war-torn lands of Anglin, where the Northmen are spreading fire and chaos, or the eerie, ancient ruins of the old empire that Baez's party explores, the world feels more dangerous and alive. You can truly feel the stakes rising as the characters venture into territories that are not just physically treacherous, but also steeped in history and conflict. And this brings us to one of the highlights of Before They Are Hanged, the lore. Abercrombie peels back more layers of his world, giving us glimpses into the deep, mysterious past. We learn more about Baez's origins and the ancient conflicts that still cast a long shadow over the present. Abercrombie reveals fascinating tidbits about the magic system, particularly with the arts and the other side. He never overwhelms you with exposition, but instead sprinkles enough juicy details throughout the story to keep you intrigued and wanting more. The world feels richer and more textured, and those mysteries that were only hinted at in the Blade itself start to come together in sharper focus here. Another phenomenal aspect of this book is how Abercrombie balances intense action with political intrigue and backstabbing. You've got major battles taking place in the frozen north, where the Crown Prince and his ill-prepared army face off against the Northmen, but the real tension often comes from the smaller, more personal conflicts between characters. Glocta, for instance, is knee-deep in political scheming, trying to figure out who he can trust in a city where betrayal seems inevitable. The way Abercrombie blends large-scale warfare with the cutthroat politics of the Union makes for a dynamic, unpredictable read. Character growth is at the heart of what makes Before They Are Hanged so compelling. In The Blade itself, Abercrombie introduced us to these flawed, morally ambiguous characters, but here, he pushes them to their absolute limits. Jazal, for example, goes through a significant transformation over the course of the book. Gone is the arrogant nobleman from the first novel, and in his place is a character who's beginning to understand the world outside his bubble of privilege. Abercrombie handles Jazal's development with subtlety, making his arc feel natural and earned rather than forced. It's a great example of how Abercrombie takes characters you may have disliked initially and turns them into figures you care about. For Logan and Pharaoh, they're trying to navigate their own personal demons while also learning to tolerate each other. Their interactions are fraught with tension, anger, and vulnerability, and watching their relationship evolve is one of the most compelling parts of the book. And of course, Glocta remains one of the most fascinating characters in fantasy. His cynicism, his wit, and internal conflict only deepen here as he tries to survive in a city just teetering on the brink of disaster. The way these characters grow and change over the course of the novel keeps you invested from start to finish. The dynamic between the members of Baez's party brings a lot of tension and intrigue. While it's tempting to think of them as a traditional fellowship embarking on a noble quest, Abercrombie turns that expectation on its head. There's a group of individuals who barely tolerate each other, and their journey is as much about managing personal conflicts as it is the dangers they face on the road. What's particularly satisfying about Before They Are Hanged is how it manages to give you elements of fantasy that readers love, the epic battles, the magical systems, and ancient lore, while Also, subverting traditional tropes. If you're a fan of character driven stories where every conversation has the potential to change the course of the plot, you'll love how Abercrombie handles his character arcs here. And if you're someone who enjoys a more cynical, gritty take on fantasy, well, you can't get any greater than this. This book continues to deliver on the promise of a morally complex world where nothing is ever black and white. In short, Before They Are Hanged has everything you could want in a fantasy novel: engaging characters, richly developed world building, political intrigue, action, and an unpredictable plot. Abercrombie has clearly hit his stride with this second installment, and it's here that the First Law trilogy starts to show its true depth and potential. If you're on the fence about the Blade itself, this book will likely win you over. It just has a perfect balance of dark humor, complex character development, and expanding lore. Middle books and trilogies often suffer from middle book syndrome. It's where the story stagnates, but that's definitely not the case here. Before They Are Hanged avoids that entirely. The pacing is tight, the characters continue to grow, and the plot builds perfectly towards what promises to be an epic conclusion. While I love The Blade itself, Before They Are Hanged takes everything up a notch. The dialogue is sharper, the world feels bigger, and the characters, they're just more compelling. If you enjoyed the first book, you're going to absolutely love this one. As always, I'd love to hear what you thought about the book. Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Next up, we'll be diving into The Last Argument of Kings, the final book in the trilogy, and let me tell you, it's my favorite of the three. So stick around for that review, and until next time, happy reading.